So, but if you don't decode that squiggly line on the paper as to having a relationship to the sound of, then you're not going to understand the whole word. Does that make sense? And therefore you won't understand the written word at all. So decoding is a crucial aspect of the 5 components, right? So it is vital that our students are able to decode. So reading is the product of decoding and comprehending language. So when we look at decoding, it's a basic thing, right? We're trying to get to comprehension and fluency. We'll get to fluency tomorrow, but fluency is what binds them together. What fluency really indicates is the automaticity, and you might want to write that word down, the automaticity of the recognition of these written symbols and their relationships to sounds, right? Again, we talked about the cognitive domain, 2015, by the way. Yeah. We talked about the cognitive domain, and you probably saw the other night that there's a demand on our cognitive domain. When we're learning something new, we have to think about it harder to figure it out. Like learning to drive a stick shift when you're first learning how to drive, or even an automatic car, right? That when you're learning how to drive, oh my gosh, you're thinking about everything, putting it in gear, keeping your foot on the brake, checking the mirrors, looking around, going slowly, checking it out. Now, you know, I drove from McAllen to here tonight, and I don't even remember what I was doing. I was listening to the Cubs game. They won again. You know, I wasn't paying a lot of attention because my mind is automatically inclined now, after years of experience of driving, to just drive without having a lot of cognitive domain. I did stop at red lights. I mean, I do pay attention and all that. But does that make sense? So if we're so focused in on just the sounds of letters and we don't develop that automaticity of just recognizing the sounds that those letters make, then we're going to just be struggling, and our cognitive domain is going to be focusing just on sounding out letters. We'll never get to the fluency and therefore never get to comprehension. Does that make sense? Yeah? So it's crucial, again, this idea of decoding or phonics as part of that big bridge to get to the end goal, which is comprehension. Yeah? Does that make sense? Okay. Any comments or questions about that? No? But again, I want to emphasize, reading is not just decoding, right? And when I was first learning Spanish, I'll never forget it. When I was first learning Spanish, I was a missionary, believe it or not. Not that I was ever going to become a priest or anything, but I was involved in the Catholic Church and came down to Tamaulipas, and I was in these small villages. And my first year down, I'd only had a couple of years of high school Spanish, and they asked me to read the epistle for Mass, you know? And so I did. I read it out, you know, out loud and everything, and everybody, ay, Mateo, lees muy bien, y sabes muy bien. I didn't understand a word I said, you know, but I was able to decode it. So decoding, again, is not the end game, but it's a crucial aspect of getting to that comprehension. Yes? Okay, so what is phonics?
Put in the sound to the picture, or like picture the word, the letter?
Yeah, very good. The letter and letters, putting the sound to it. That's right. It teaches students the relationship between those letters and the sounds. And we know that sounds are important. If we don't develop the sounds appropriately, then we'll make bad connections when we're trying to figure out the relationship among them, right? So this is something that's called, and I wrote this later, I don't know if you can see it with this color, but it's graphophonemic knowledge. And you might want to write that down because these words do come out, you know, graphophonemic knowledge. And we're taking the test and all of a sudden it says the graphophonemic knowledge. We're like, what, graphophonemic? I don't know that word, but we can figure it out, right? What does graph mean?
A chart.
Orthographia, writing, right? And phonemic? Sound, right? So graphophonemic knowledge is that knowledge of the written letter and the relationship to the sound, right? So we should know that term. Yeah? Any comments or questions? Yes? Say. Oh, I'm sorry, yes? Graphophonemic knowledge? Well, it's the understanding of the relationship between the written and the sound. Yeah? So basically, it's a fancy word for phonics. It's a fancy word for phonics. We're probably all familiar with phonics. I know that when I was first starting to teach, and you guys were little babies, that this whole idea of hooked on phonics. Do you remember that program, Hooked on Phonics? Yeah. The idea of if you can decode it, it will come type of thing. So that's basically phonics, right? Graphophonemic knowledge.
I have a friend.
Yes, Cesar. Cesar and then Anna.
Awareness? No, that's phonemic awareness. That's another thing.
Yeah. We could maybe interchange knowledge and awareness, but awareness is a broader thing. Knowledge is a little bit more understanding of it. Awareness is just, well, I know it's there, right? Does that make sense? But yeah, I mean, in a way, for our purposes, we could almost interchange those terms.
It can be a small child, like before kinder, knowing those sounds.
Sure. You know, I see it in pre-K 3 now, where kids are learning their letter sounds relationship.
And reading. Because I have a friend that's Asian and her 1-year-old knows how to read.
Yeah, well.
That's probably why. Not that I'm biased, but she taught. She
And
got
if
the
not,
hook.
the child gets whipped.
she taught her that hooked on phonics that you just said, and she the little. I mean, I have a 2-year-old, and I'm like, she knows how to read, and then that she literally reads sentences.
Well, you know, maybe sometime we'll go out for a Negra Modelo and we'll have a discussion about
Right.
how we really learn to read. I mean, what we're going through is, yes. And I will say that generally speaking, this is the sequence of events, and we generally start at around 3, 4, 5 years old to do it. Now, are there exceptions? Certainly. There are kids at the age of 2. My children were reading Shakespeare by the time they were 2 years old.
No,
they were
it's
not.
too
I'm kidding. There certainly are exceptions, and then there are geniuses who don't learn to read until they're 10, 11, 12 years old, right? And so we have to take into account those outliers, you might call them, but we're talking about the vast majority of people when we talk about these things. Can they do it? Yes. But again, and again, this will be over in Negra Modelos when we're talking about this, but it really has a lot to do with the understanding of the child, and sometimes our brains are just not capable as it's developing to understand certain things, right? And research would show that if we read to children regularly, even when they're in the womb, seriously, if we read to children and then we're reading to them right when they're born and up to, they're going to develop those reading skills faster because they're accustomed to it. The automaticity, again, they're distinguishing the sounds, they're having those conversations with more proficient peers, and so they'll develop these skills a little more quickly. But yeah, you know, just like second language acquisition and reading, we certainly hold high expectations for children, but we don't want to force something on children who are not yet developmentally ready for these things. Am I answering your question? It wasn't really a question, it was more of a comment, but am I responding appropriately to it? Okay. Any other questions or comments? These are excellent, by the way. No? Okay. So yeah, are we cool with what graphophonemic knowledge is? Phonics, right? Yeah. Okay. So, going to your point, Anna, you know, many students come to first grade understanding the critical concepts and skills related to print recognition and being phonologically aware. But some students don't have as many opportunities to experience it, and those are the ones who are going to struggle more. Right? It makes sense. We talked about this with word poverty yesterday. Okay? Successful readers. They really look at the words more. We teach children to look at the print. Excellent strategy to do. But the successful readers get away from that rather quickly and they focus in on the actual words. And they're able to decode them, right? They have those strategies to do that. And as we talked about, this idea of automaticity. Once it becomes automatic, where they look at a word, let's say mess, and after 5 exposures, they're saying mess rather than mess, right? It needs to become automatic. So more exposure to words, when it becomes more automatic, that's when they become successful readers. Yes? The alphabetic principle, and again, you'll want to make note of this because this term does come up a lot on assessments as well, is this idea that letters represent sounds. Phonics, right? Letters represent sounds. But then a certain order of those letters put together, those sounds, create words, sentences, paragraphs, complete thoughts. Okay? So the alphabetic principle is not just knowing A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. That's very good. We want kids to be able to say the alphabet, right? However, the alphabetic principle is the idea that it's related to the combination of the sounds that they represent, of that these letters represent, and that they have meaning. Doesn't have meaning. Fun has meaning. Is part of fun. So it's the combination. And again, this is from the state of Texas, and I'm very glad that they put this in here, that it's the key to learning to read in many languages, including English and Spanish, and French, and German, and Hmong, and Ning, and Lao, all languages. Yeah? Any questions about the alphabetic principle?
You've heard Hmong?
Huh?
You've heard Hmong?
I have heard Hmong.
My roommate in college is Hmong.
Yeah? Here in the Valley?
No, Detroit.
In Detroit, yeah. A lot of Hmong refugees came to Minnesota. And so I did work with some for a while. And it's tough because there's no written language.
No, he was from Wisconsin.
Yeah. Okay, so when we have these letter recognition activities, it's to rapidly identify these. And we're not going to do this activity, but we'll see this alphabet map and alphabet arc. You have these plastic letters. The kids have this arc, and you'll see it in just a moment. And the idea is to have them place the letters and say the sounds, and they eventually master it. The first time you have kids doing this, letters are going to be all over the place, and some kids are going to struggle a little bit with it, but eventually you give them enough time to work on it, and they'll be fine. But that's just one little strategy. As I said, we're not going to do it. But it's the alphabet arc where they have the letters, and they have to put them in order, and while they're doing it, they're saying the sound of the letter. And lots of times I've seen teachers say the name of the letter and the sound, which is probably a good idea as well. So B, B, or E, B, yeah? And then they have to put them in the correct order. Okay. I think we've seen that before. It's explicit and systematic. When we teach the letter-sound correspondence, we need to be explicit and systematic. We have to have our plan of which letters we're going to do first and why, and we have to be very explicit. This is the letter B, and the sound is B, right? So Then the question is, what letters do we teach first? Which letters do we teach first? And which sounds do we teach first? Before we look at that, this is what I would like for you to do. And I would prefer that you were in groups of 2, but I tell you what, if you want to be a group of 3, that's cool too. Okay? But with your partner or partners, select 7 letters that you think are the most commonly used letters in the English alphabet. If you prefer to do this in Spanish, that's fine. Okay? You must include 2 vowels. So 2 vowels, 5 consonants.
Is this at any level?
I'm sorry?
Is this at any level?
At any level, this is our level. This is you. This is you. Don't think of a 3-year-old. Don't think of a 10-year-old. Don't think of a strapping 23-year-old. Okay? Okay? Okay, have you picked your letters? No. I'll give you 2 minutes to pick your 7 letters. No, I'm sorry. It must be at least 2 vowels. You're right.
But you can have more.
But if you have 5 vowels, you only have 2 consonants. You can only have 7 letters altogether. 7 letters altogether. 2 of the letters must, at least 2 letters must be vowels, but they couldn't be more. You ready? Go ahead. I'll give you about a minute or so to choose your letters. You and your partner.
RSTLNE.
No, I don't think so. She was sick.
She was pretty sick.
Okay, do you have your 7 letters? Or do you need another 15 seconds? Do you have your 7 letters? This group 7? 7? Uh-oh. Okay. 15 more seconds. Okay, don't look at me. Take your letters. Huh? It does have security value. Okay, I've been looking for that. Oh, Pat Sajak is now my hero. He's from Wisconsin. I never wanted to admit that out loud.
Everybody's gonna hear our answers.
And they're going to copy. Everybody wants yours. Okay, do we have them? Yes. Okay, moving on. Now, I am going to time this one because I do want you to only take 2 minutes. Using those letters, no others. So if you did not choose, for example, the letter V, do not use a word with the letter V. Okay? Did anybody choose the letter V? No. Good. No? Okay. So, using those letters, you have 2 minutes to make up as many words as you can. Just using those 7 letters. You and your partners, okay? Using just those 7 letters.
So, okay, I got it.
If you did not choose the letter G, don't use a word with G. Ready? You've already started. And go! 2 minutes.
Is it just a word within these one letter or all the letters?
All the letters. Okay, so you're using these 7 words that we chose to make it.
So no letters.
Huh? It's going up. Car? Yeah, like parking. Yeah.
Nah.
We're allowed to use the same letter twice.
Yeah.
And
One more minute. Uh-oh, it seems like you ran out after the first.
I have the
Sure, yeah, good question. Can you repeat the letters? Yes. So if you chose the letter T and you want to come up with a word that has double T in it, that's fine.
What about plurals?
If you have S and your plural is an S, but don't go from mouse to mouses. Okay. Unless you want to do a Dr. Seuss.
Which they don't recommend those books, right? A lot of schools don't, like a lot of, I remember when I was going for education, they didn't think those.
See, this reminds me of that.
Really? Oh,
I
they're
think-
very popular.
That's what I'm saying, like,
Very popular. And his 100th birthday was maybe 2 years ago, or was it last year? And I mean, all over the nation, in our district, Dr.
Because,
Seuss,
yeah, with
even
his
up to the high
birthdays,
school level.
yeah.
How many times? As many did I have to.
Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Stop. No more words. No more words. You got what you got. That's fine. Count up your words. How many words do you have? 16, 12.
He beat me.
22. 27. 23, because you really thought about what you like. That's right. 25. Okay. 32. Oh my gosh, I want to be in this group. I believe you. I believe you. I will check spelling in a moment.
36.
You got 36.
36.
No.
Wow. They were listening to you. Okay, here we go. This is the next step. This is what I would like for you to do, and then I would ask for some volunteers to share if you want. But here we go. Step 3. Using those words and 2 irregular words, which might be called sight words, such as the, said, or of, write a story.
Does it have to
You'll
make
have
sense?
2 minutes. Huh?
Does it have to make sense?
No.
Perfect.
I mean, it's a story, though. I mean, it can be a little wild, but we should probably be able to understand. Okay, do you understand what you're doing? Now again, going back to this young lady's question about doubling up things, you can use the word of 5 times in your story. The word the more than once, but you want to use at least 2 irregular words. Ready? Go. 2 minutes.
Those words, we could use like the and
2 irregular words. That's it. You can't use the, and, of, and, said, and.
so like just like that, they're like helpful words, right? Like to combine your sentences to make your sentences good. Yeah, with it.
I said the cowboys.
Can we use like, if it's the, can we use it more than once?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You can use, I would say it's more regular, but it's I would say it's more regular. We teach Okay, you have about a minute left.
I can't think of it. I keep hearing everybody with the rats. I'm thinking everybody's doing rats. So I'm trying to change my. That's
Oh, this is a year earlier.
Yeah. So it's 20. That's they changed it from 1 year to the other.
Yeah. They do that. I think part of it is to generate more money for testing. I'm serious. I'm totally serious.
up the story.
Okay, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Stop. Pencils and pens down, please. Okay, I'm sure it's not a finished novel yet. Don't worry about it.
You got 2 paragraphs.
Oh my gosh! These guys are overachievers over here. Okay, yeah, this will be your homework assignment to write a novel. I want 15 pages by tomorrow. Single spaced. No. Okay. But do I have volunteers to read your story for the rest of us?
I have 2 sentences.
Oh, good. Okay, let's listen to our colleague, though, okay? We don't have to worry about writing anymore, okay? This is not a graded assignment. Don't worry. So let's listen to our colleagues. Go for it.
So my letters were R, S, T, L, N, E, and A. So my sentences are, she said sorry to Rob. She ate the soft egg. No, ate.
Oh, good. See, I understood that. Yeah, she ate the soft egg. I'm so sorry. I bet it wasn't, though. Or was it she? Yeah. Excellent. Good. Excellent job. Okay. Anybody else want to read your story? Yes.
Mine's a weird sentence.
Okay, cool.
My letters were AESMRTB. The brat steams the best meats, treats the teens, beats Sam.
Okay, I think that's perfectly fine for a Friday night story. Absolutely, yeah. You don't have to say anything negative about that one. Yes, let's hear it.
Sentence.
Okay.
The smart pet rat sat on the mat, said the team rat.
Okay, yeah, very good. So you even used the word rat a couple of times. Wonderful. Let's hear it.
Our letters were ABCETSO. The cat that sat on the cot ate beets to ate beets, BEETS, to a beat as he set a test on the boat.
Wow. Hey, you guys are very good. I don't think I've ever heard stories this good before. And I mean them for a Friday. Excellent. Yeah. One more?
Yeah, okay. So ours were what were they? RSTLNAO.
Okay. It's a good story. Wait, just wait. I can tell. Okay.
Soon the last rat stand ran onto the tan toast.
The tan toast. Yeah, I like that. It has a rhythm to it. Wonderful. Very good. Okay. So you guys used the letters that you thought were most common or that you're most familiar with, and you came up with some excellent stories. Yeah? So what is the correct order of how we teach letters and their sounds? What is the correct order?
Of most importance.
Okay, possibly. I'm going to, what's the educational response? What's the best?
Depends on the child.
It depends, right. Maybe not the child, but the group, right? It depends, and it depends on the district you're working at, because the district will probably tell you the order of letters that you have to do. But some guidelines, there is no one right way. Some guidelines for teaching the letter sound correspondent is to generally begin with continuous sounds. Letters that have continuous sounds. So here's a list of letters that have continuous sounds. They're not the names of the letters, they're the sounds. So what's the sound of this letter? Very good. You see, it's continuous. You could just hold that for as long as your lungs allow. This one? Ooh. Ooh. Yeah, wow. I think I like your interpretation better. Yeah, what about this one? That's right. If we look at all these letters, these are letters that represent continuous sounds. All vowels are continuous sounds, okay? A or A, E or E, they're all continuous, plus the rest of these letters. Now, well, before we ask why, it might be better to start with continuous sounds rather than clipped sounds. Let's look at the clipped sounds, though. What's the sound of this one? B. Very good. You can't Try it. I want to. Maybe you can. Maybe you can hold that one. I don't know though. No, it's right. It's clipped or it stops. You can't hold it any further. When the letter C represents the right, it's not. That's various sounds. This one, right? Those are clipped or stopped sounds of letters. So why do you think for our students learning how to read and introducing phonics, the graphophonemic knowledge, why do you think, or they're really developing their phonological awareness or the phonemic awareness, why might it be better to start with continuous rather than clipped sounds?
Because it's something you're going to blend in with.
Okay, very good.
It's easier to make a sound, because sometimes even kids confuse like the b and the d.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, and part of that confusion is if you can hold it out longer, you're a better model for the kids, and they'll be able to hear that more. So if I say the sound of this letter is mm. Everybody, let me hear you say mm. Very good. I can hear it. We can hold it out as long as you want. If I say the sound of this letter is k, let me hear k. It doesn't give kids enough time, perhaps, to really feel that sound. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So again, does that mean we're eliminating all clip sounds? No. But generally speaking, we want to work with the continuous sounds before we start working with clip sounds.
So from your experience, kids have more trouble with which ones? The clipped?
Generally speaking, they would have more trouble with the clipped, yes. But again, it depends on how you introduce this. So if you've started off, and I would say that generally the continuous sounds are better to start off with. They're getting the idea of the sound-letter relationship, and they're distinguishing those sounds at a slower pace first, and then we speed it up, right? So if we're doing the continuous sounds, when we get to the clip sounds, they're more prepared to just do the faster. Am I making sense with that response? Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Is it more because it doesn't have, some of the words don't, like graph, you wouldn't hear the P. And like known, you wouldn't hear the K.
Well, we'll get to those special spellings, you know. We don't want to start off with, okay, we learned the G sound, so now I want you to read this word, right. Graphophonemic. No, I mean, and knowledge with a K. Right. No, I mean, again, we start off with, in Spanish, what do we start off with? Ma, me, mi, mo, mu, right? Ma, e, e. Right? So again, but then we get into other sounds with it. But I guess what I'm saying is we're not worried about spelling quite yet. We're going to look at some spelling rules tonight. But right now, when we're introducing this concept to kids and they're just starting to recognize the alphabetic principle and then really glomming onto the sounds of each of them, this is a suggested way. And again, as I said a little bit earlier, just a couple minutes ago, there is no one right way. You're going to have to follow the curriculum of your school district. Because I've seen it where this is a general sequence of teaching the letter sound. A, m, t, which all of a sudden you have a clip sound. Right. Yes? Did you have a comment or question?
What about ease of pronunciation? Like, because I know B is easier to pronounce than V or Z and stuff like that.
Could be. I know a lot of people like to teach the letter E first because that's the most common letter in the English alphabet. Ease of sound, perhaps. Perhaps. I don't know. B is easier than Z?
Z, because it's just the bilabial as opposed to like fricative or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be. It could be. But again, B is clipped, you know. I don't know if that's difficult. I don't know. That's a good one. That's a good question. I don't know. I'm sure there is some research out there about what is more difficult to actually pronounce for these. I think a lot of it has to do with this continuous versus clipped, though. And so, you know, s and are much easier than p and d, or even b. And, you know, I guess I'm just thinking in the back of my mind, I hear a lot of kids, when they're learning the Z, they're very good at that right away. Zzz, they love it like a B. So I don't know, maybe it is tough.
I mean, like, some of the first words you say as a baby, it's like baba, mama.
Yeah, mama, papa. Yeah, good. Okay, this one, you might want to take a couple of notes about voiced versus voiceless. Voiceless, or voiced and unvoiced sounds. Because, and what is your name, sir?
Eric.
Eric. So Eric was just mentioning about how we form the sounds of letters in our mouths, right? And when we look at these sounds, what is the sound of this right here? B. Right? Very good. What's the sound of this? Very good. So if you put your hands right here, or one hand on your throat, okay, and again, do the B sound, not the letter B, but the sound of the letter B. What is it? B. Now do the P sound. Can we feel a difference?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's the vibration. When it's voiced, there's a vibration. But they're formed exactly the same way in our mouths. They're formed exactly the same way. When we look at the letter V, we think of the sound. What is the sound of V? Now do it without the vibration. What do you get? The F, right? So V and F are formed exactly the same way in our mouths, but the V, or the V sound, is voiced. Yeah, don't choke yourself. Okay. You did fine on the story. You did fine, don't worry. Yeah. It's voiced, but the formed exactly the same way in the mouth, voiceless, unvoiced. Okay, what about the letter, or the sound of this? What is it? What's the, that's voiced, right? What's the voiceless? S.
So then voice is just like the vibration and voice is the no vibration?
That's correct. Voiced has the vibration. I mean, that's how we're going to say it, okay? Voiced has a vibration, and voiceless does not, or unvoiced does not. So again, when you have 25 kids in a classroom, this can cause some problems when you're teaching sounds, right? Because you can't go around and hold their little necks all the time, and especially if there are video cameras around. You don't want that happening. So you can see where kids might have difficulty distinguishing between the B and the P sound, right? So again, there's nothing wrong with being explicit and systematic in this. And what do I mean by explicit? Have the kids hold their throats and teach them the sounds. You don't have to get into linguists, you know, this is bilabial or anything, but you could, I guess, a little bit. Bi meaning two, labial, lips, right? Okay. So you could, but really, just so that they're able to distinguish. But can you see where that may cause some problems with some students? Yeah. Also, you know, boy, we have a lot of second language learners here, and this is one reason why it's good to teach children in their first language how to read. But pronunciation of certain letter sounds may vary from speaker to speaker. You know, I've been living in the Valley for 25 years, and sometimes I forget about the accents down here. I'll go up to other parts of Texas or up to Wisconsin, and, you know, it sounds normal to me here, but it's very different than the way people have accents in other places, right? And so we have to be aware of that. And I think of one of my sons-in-law, Mike, he's originally from West Virginia, And I don't know if this is a West Virginia thing or if it's a Mike thing, but he'll say, oh, I have a cold shoulder. You don't hear the L before the D. It's cold outside. He'll say code
It's like almost
rather
Canadian.
than cold.
It's almost Canadian.
Yeah, well, A? Yeah, it could be. But he'll say shoulder. I mean, those are regional differences perhaps, and we have to be aware that the way we pronounce things may not be exactly what the children are accustomed to hearing as well.
So where does that come from? I mean, if everyone's learning the same, like it's the same
Isn't
phonics.
that
So then
amazing?
why?
Yeah, like a Boston accent.
Yeah. So why does that? I don't know. I guess because
Culture.
phonics is the same
Uh-huh.
everywhere. Or
Dialect.
I mean, it should be.
It's not just a dialect, it's our pronunciations. And again, boy, you know, I don't know how many of you have traveled extensively in Mexico, but it's true almost in every state. It's become a little more homogenized over the last few years, but it's true in every state too. There are just regional differences. Again, what we discussed last night, linguists can be prescriptive or descriptive, but if you read some descriptive stuff from some linguists, they just describe how they are different. I mean, Chicago has an accent of its own. Minnesota has an accent of its own.
So are
And
they
so
using the same
it's
sounds?
regional. I mean, again, if you ask my son-in-law to spell cold shoulder, he'll spell it like this.
The right way.
He'll spell it just like that. He'll say, yeah, cold shoulder. So, I guess what I'm saying is, this would be another good discussion over some negro modelos, right? But all I'm asking is that we just be careful that kids come in with different concepts, perhaps, because of their experiences of how things sound. And so we have to be careful. We certainly want to teach it what we view as the right way, right? But be aware that some kids may not have heard it the way we think it should be or the way we're teaching it. Am I making sense with that? So, yeah. Okay, we'll skip that one. Okay, so here we want to know that these are the major concepts about reading words, okay? Not comprehension, but reading words. Some letters can represent more than one sound. Can you think of an example of that? Some letters can represent more than one sound. The letter C. Right, the letter C can represent how many sounds?
3.
Well, definitely k and s, right?
That's true.
And if it's combined, you know, with the letter H, then it's ch, right? But yeah, definitely one letter has more than one sound there, right? Different, or somebody said the letter A, all vowels, right? Long and short, of course. Different letters can represent the same sound. Can you think of two different letters that can have the same sound?
C and Q.
Okay, C and Q, C and K,
K and Q.
K and Q, right? G and J. Yeah, absolutely.
PH.
Here we go. With the letter C. Sounds can be represented by a single letter or a combination of letters.
C and B.
What? Are you saying something?
In my mind.
Did she say something bad?
I heard a bad word.
No, like the F.
You weren't here for the finger exercise last night. Okay. Well, I'm glad. Yeah. No. Yeah. So what? The F has the sound, and what else?
PH.
PH, right? The combination of letters can represent that single sound, right? Different strategies can be used to read unknown words, and we'll perhaps look at that. Generalizations may help determine the correct pronunciation, but may not always apply to every word, right? As we had our irregular words earlier. If you give a child T-H-E and they're it's T, it's not going to work. right? So there are some things that just don't follow the rules as well.
Well, even like when you teach that word, when you start with the. So people, I remember when growing up, because Spanish was my first language, I always thought it was the apple. And so all of a sudden they're like, no, it's the apple. So it's like, you know, what is that? Is that just something that the teacher?
No, it's the apple.
So then what is the apple? How come people when they read?
Do you know the rule for that?
No.
You probably know the rule for this, Eric. No? Oh, well, that word, T-H-E, does really have two pronunciations.
Oh.
It really does. It's the and the. Both of them are good.
Oh, okay.
But it depends on when you use them. When the next word begins with a consonant sound, it's the. When it begins with a vowel sound, not a vowel, but a vowel sound, it's the.
Is that like tomato?
So like
tomato?
A and
Not really. This, I mean, you know, language evolves, things change, and you'll probably hear a lot of people say the apple. But the reality is that it was created as a bridge. You know, we don't say in Spanish, es amigo de el vecino. There's a bridge there, del, right? I mean, it's a rule that you don't say de el, it's del, right? I mean, unless it's a proper noun, like la batalla de el amo. But that's the same thing in English. The apple is and so it's really the apple to distinguish. So there is a rule, but you would not say the car.
So is it like A and you use and even if
That's right. That's right. Exactly like and. That's right.
Exactly like what?
And an. So you wouldn't say I ate a apple, I ate an apple. There's a bridge there to help connect it a little bit and to distinguish, right? Okay. Students begin decoding regular words, and I want you to put an accent, or not an accent, an asterisk by that. You start by decoding regular words when they know those few letter sound relationships. So you've taught the letter C has the k sound. You've taught the letter A, which has the A sound. You've taught the letter T, which has the T sound. You can have them work on cat. But don't throw in irregular words and don't throw in words that will mess them up. We always want to start with things that are going by the rule first. Okay? A lot of rules get broken in English, I know. But as we're learning it, we learn it through the rules. Okay? Decoding instruction is active, reflective, and inductive learning. It is not done with worksheets and drill and kill. Okay? What does that mean?
Drill and kill?
Well, what does it mean to be active and not drill and kill? Do you know what I mean by drill and kill?
Yes.
like teach, do it?
Well,
No,
just
drill and kill is just
drill and
before.
kill. Do it, and do it
without-
some more on your own on the paper.
paper.
Yeah, that's drill and kill. That's
That's
maybe
the-
that's not. a
That's how
21st
it is
century
now.
anymore. Yeah, it can be. But why is it better to be active?
It should be. To be active, because you have different types of learners.
You have different types of learners. That's right.
And you have to be, in order to be active with sounds, I mean, drill and kill wouldn't teach them that.
Very good. If they're doing a silent activity relating to sounds, not as effective as if they're actually interacting with their peers or with an adult, where there's a lot of feedback given. Remember yesterday we saw that peers tend to correct each other, right? Teach it as kinesthetically as possible, again, getting them up, moving around, etc. Okay? So when we're teaching, not usually, we start off with words that the letters have been taught. Now again, I just want to either remind us or emphasize that that doesn't mean we're not reading to our kids. It doesn't mean that they can't be exposed to words. You know, if you have the alphabet up there and you have A, apple, B, ball, C, cat, you know, we don't ignore apple and all that. But as far as them actively being able to master this concept of putting letters together to form words, we only start with those words that they've been, or those letters that they've been exposed to. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay.
So as a morning routine, you wouldn't say all the letters? Because I remember.
Oh, sure.
I was to say, because I remember in kinder, the teacher starting off, she would start off with a song and it would be A, apple, A, B. But the kids didn't have known the other letters, but.
Again, remember, what do we do first? What was the first component of reading?
Phonemic awareness.
Phonemic awareness. Very good. This guy, you are just right on it all the time. Phonemic awareness. And we said what? Oral language development is the foundation.
Okay.
So we don't stop the oral language development. We do the alphabet song every blessed day. We do it. You know, maybe ad nauseum through the teacher. But we do it. And they get it. They get the rhythm of it. They understand it. They're seeing it. They're not mastering it. We're not expecting them to master the letter-sound relationship when we do the alphabet every day. But they're getting the idea of the alphabet. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then we say, you know what? This is the order of the alphabet. You guys are really good at that. But let's forget about the first one for a little bit. Let's go to this third letter. Do you remember A, B, C? C, that's right. Okay. But the sound of that is k. And we're going to do 100 activities with k, 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 right? And then we're going to go to A, and then we're going to go to T, and all these different letters. Now let's put them together. What sound does this letter make? K, k. Excellent. Which one does this make? A, a. This one, t, cat. Put it together. K, a, t. What is it? Cat. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So again, there's a difference between exposure and expecting mastery. But when we start teaching the sound-letter relationship, phonics, graphophonemic knowledge, we start off slowly and we expect those mastery steps to move forward. Am I answering your question? Okay. Okay. So again, I think this is another thing too. Follow sounding out a word with its fast pronunciation. So again, you know, thinking of continuous sounds perhaps, and having kids see the word, we'd say, okay, what is this word? You know, and what will kids be doing after we've gone over these letters? They'll be going, Do we stop there and say, good? No, you're right. It's man. Let's try it again. And man. Let's say man. Yeah, so again, we're getting them to that automaticity stage as well. Maybe not to that stage, but we're getting them we're priming them for that automaticity, right? One other thing, and this is true, and the state of Texas expects this, so just make a note here. Move from orally sounding out words to silently sounding them out in your head. That doesn't mean we do it too quickly, though. Please don't do it too quickly. And please, here is where we need to see the individual child. Some children will do this more quickly. Some children, it will take more time. But again, I mean, I don't know about you all. You're all studying, so you all read stuff, but I don't think you're at home reading everything out loud, right? We want to get to a stage where we're reading silently and understanding it, right? But we do want to move from sounding everything out to just reading it. Eventually. Okay, making and sorting words. Again, you'll have a chance to review this on your own. I'm not going to get into it too much right now, but this is where you would have groups of words and different, let's say on index cards, and they sort the words according to what you're asking them to do. Again, think it and run. You could start off with, okay, I want you to put all the words that begin with the sound in this pile, right? I want you to put all the words that end with the sound in this pile, etc. All words that end with the at sound over here, right? But having them actually doing it is a very good task. And again, that gradual release of responsibility, you do it with them first, then they do it as a group, then they can do it on their own, okay? So again, I'm not going to go over this, you'll have a chance to look at that. But I will just say that the state of Texas will expect you to do some sorting of words. And again, it makes them responsible and it makes them think about it, of why these words are sorted the way they are. Okay? So, teaching irregular words. What are those? What are irregular words, by the way? What do you think?
Exception to the rule.
Exception to the rules. That's right. Okay? So, what would be some irregular words? We saw 3 of them tonight, at least.
Let and lead.
No and now, not necessarily, but there is a reason why. Those are different, I know, but they're not irregular.
Sight?
Yeah, like sight words. So what would be a couple?
The?
The is the sight word.
Grow?
Okay.
It's grow?
Which one?
Grow?
Grow? Probably not. There's a rule to grow. Yeah, remember we said
Yeah.
voiceless, right? But here, of, that's voiced. And the letter O is of. That's irregular. And the other word that we saw was this. Generally we would say, well, A followed by I is the long A sound, but this isn't said, it's said. So, teach the most frequently occurring irregular words. And you'll have this from your district that you should know. And as Anna keeps saying, irregular words generally are called sight words. Irregular equals sight words. And you'll see if you even Google this, what sight words are kindergarten kids expected to master, which sight words are first grade kids, second grade, so on. So you'll see those words. And they're due to familiarity and being within stories for them. Okay? So,
High school site.
are there irregular words in Spanish? Are there sight words?
I'm sure there are. Way.
I don't think everything's with sound.
I'm sure there are, but no. Yeah, not really.
No, 'cause
there
everything
aren't.
has a sound.
There aren't, unless they come from another language. But
Spanish is easier.
But in English, yeah, there are lots. If you Google it, you'll see a long, long list of sight words. Okay, this one, again, you've probably seen this in other coursework that you've had. If you haven't, please think of word walls. Word walls are crucial in classrooms. Have you done stuff with word walls in your coursework?
to make one.
You had to make one? Okay, we won't go over it, and I hope they're interactive, and I hope that they're meaningful. Because I will say, I remember when I got to a district and I was talking about the necessity of word walls, especially for our ELLs, they're good for all kids. The superintendent said, okay, I want everybody to have a word wall. And then some people put up word walls in the back of the room. Nobody ever looked around. I mean, the back was full of words, but it was meaningless. It has to be meaningful, where as students are learning, you have them up there, right? And then you can, after they've mastered them, you move them to another side, and then the new week's words, etc. Right? Okay. So again, if you guys had to make word walls for part of your course, so I'm not going to go over that.
For work, not for here.
Oh, not for a course. I don't mean to go over it too quickly. Are we somewhat familiar with word walls, or not really? Okay. Google it. No, but word walls. Again, depending on what you're teaching, onset and rhyme, right? Rhyme and alliteration. If you're teaching that type of stuff, you might have your week's words of all M words, right? So you're teaching the letter M. You have very simple words: mat, man, met.
But word walls, are they mostly for elementary? They're also for, kids.
Oh, word walls.
All ages?
We're talking about it in regards to the little kids right now learning how to read, but word walls are for everybody. Word walls, K-12, pre-K-12. Absolutely. And generally at the higher levels, then it would be more terminology for your specific area. But for this, for the little kids, we're talking about similar words, right? Not in meaning necessarily, but in sound letter relationship, right? Yeah. And have the kids practice using them. So, can you see that at all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, can you?
Want me to cover one eye?
Yeah, this is a test. This is a test. Okay. So, this is a kind of a sample word wall, and again, this wasn't just put up at the beginning of the year. I would say, especially for our kids now too, what you want to do is have something visual with it. So, you know, you have man, have a picture of a man next to it. You have, mat, have a picture of a placemat next to it, etc. Cat, a picture of a cat next to it. And then you can put them off to the side. But you always want to revisit the words. So you can think of some different activities for it. But let me just, if you can see these, and hopefully you can, and if not, pull them up on your screen there, and maybe share with a partner. But some of these things you can do just like that. But if we go more into the meaning of words, you could say something like this. Look at the words, and we've gone over these words over the last 8 weeks, you know. I want you to fill in a word from the word wall in this sentence to make it, to have it make sense. So, I wear a coat, blank, it's cold. I wear a coat, blank, it's cold.
Because.
Because it's cold would certainly fit, and when it's cold would certainly fit. Good. And then you can have those discussions. Why would both of those words fit? Okay. Please look at this and tell me 2 words that rhyme with no.
Go.
Go.
So.
And so. Very good. Okay. I mean, there are a lot of different ones. I won't get into rapping. I don't feel like rapping. But there are a lot of different ways. But again, if you aren't real familiar with word walls, this is what you do. And I mean, just please write this down if you're not real familiar. Start off slowly. Use words that you are studying. Make them accessible to the student. If your class were like this, you wouldn't have a word wall on the back wall. You have a word wall where it's accessible to the student just with the words that you are studying. When you're finished studying those words, move it to another place, maybe on the side over here where people have somewhat access to it, and then you start a new set of words for that following week or that following 6 weeks or whatever. And they're learning them and they're mastering those. You get finished with that, you move them over there, putting them appropriately, maybe alphabetically or by groups, you know, family members or whatever, transportation. But you start off slowly where they master a small group, but they always have access. And so maybe you're studying these words very specifically, but during the middle of the week, let's review our words from before. And that's when you do the activities of like, it's when it's cold, or I wore a coat, blank, it's cold, where they're referring back. Does that make sense? So you focus in on those words for a specific period of time, but you never throw them away. You put them up in another area to bring in more words to focus on, then you put those over there. Does that make sense? Always interactive. Okay.
She had a question.
Yes.
Okay, so not necessarily with word walls, but so just kind of phonics and everything in general. You keep saying children, and they get, because that's where they're learning how to read, the little children. But what about high school? You get students that are ELLs, they're left students. They look at words, and I mean, we can't take the time to teach them how to read because we have to teach something else. So how do you do it with high school students who, you know, they don't have a class like this to teach them how to read?
Yeah, see,
So
although I'm glad that you weren't here because I might have gotten a finger last night, it's too bad you weren't here because we had an excellent question about that too. I do want to say this first. And what you said is very valid, but I do want to say this. When I was first teaching at Pan Am, I had a lot of alternative certification students. And I remember first night I would always ask them, first night of class, why do you want to be a teacher? And they had come in with their reasons, and I always thought they were good, valid reasons. But inevitably, many people would say, if I can reach one student, it'll be all worth it. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds good, but what about the other 23 in your classroom? We got to work with all of them. Okay, so I am glad that you asked that question. We can't ignore them. We can't just say, I need to move on, so I can't help. We have to. But we cannot assume that they don't know things about language. We cannot assume that. If a child is migrating from, let's say, Mexico, which is the common experience here, to the US at a secondary level, the chances are most of them have a pretty good knowledge of their first language. Right? So letter-sound relationship, generally not a major problem with the basics. I mean, the letter M in English, how does that sound? That's right. And the letter M in Spanish, how does that sound? The same. Wow, cool. Right? The letter C in Spanish, how does that sound? Or piscina. P-I-S-C-I-N-A. It has a sound, right? Wow, that's the same in English. So you look for those connections with the kids. You look for those connections. And then you teach, we'll see tonight about syllables and stuff, and we're not going to get a lot into spelling patterns, but then you look at what they're struggling with, you know? Once they learn T-I-O-N, they're not, if we could teach that directly to those kids, educación, liberación, oh, those are cognates, education, liberation, but we know it's the letter T, which is the T sound, but whenever we have T-I-O, and then N generally, it's the sh sound. So let's try that, education, liberation, you know what I mean? So yeah, we have to use what they know and help them learn it in this language. And I know it's tough. I'm not saying it's easy, but we have to find that way to do it. And if they go into an ESL class, you and that I don't know if you're teaching government or whatever, but you work with that ESL teacher to say, these are some of the vocabulary terms that we're working on that they need to recognize.
I mean, it's like, I teach biology. So, I mean, I communicate with my students, but, I mean, I can't teach biology in Spanish.
No, please don't.
So
no.
it's like, it's like I can't.
You know what? Last night I think I said the same thing. He's not here tonight, is he? No, he's not here. But during the break we can talk about some strategies, okay? Because that is, it's very valid, but it's kind of for another time. Okay? Yeah? Okay, so this is what I'd like for you to do. I would like for you to turn to your partner and discuss these two questions. What is the alphabetic principle, and what is one way to teach the letter-sound relationships? Okay? I don't think we're going to have time to have you all demonstrate. We're going to take about 2 minutes to do this, and then we'll take our break. When Juan stands up, I turn around. But yeah, I think we still have at least 1 minute. So I'm going to give you a minute to discuss this with your partner. What is the alphabetic principle? What's one way to teach letter-sound relationship? Then we'll take our break.
When they're little,
What's one way to teach?
Simple words. Individual.
So you're teaching sound. Again, Randy, on point, right? On point. You are legit.
What is the alphabetic principle? What's that? That's right. That there are these things that are letters, and those letters represent sounds, right? Very good. That's basically it, right? and then we put them together and we come up with words, right? What's one way to teach letter-sound relationship? I know we didn't go into a lot of strategies, but what's one way?
Begin with continuous words.
I'm sorry?
Continuous sounds first.
Yeah, I would say maybe work with continuous sounds, perhaps first. Yeah, another way? Maybe using word walls, being kinesthetic, having them move around, right? Things like that. Okay, it's 7:16, I think. Geez, sorry, Juan, we're a minute late. Yeah, 7:16. So we'll meet back at 7:26. Yes? We fine with that? And then we'll really learn some stuff. 7:26. Oh, I'm sorry. I might have mispronounced that one. Or it might have been wishful thinking on some students' part.
You know, it takes 7
What do you want to do? It has to be like right here.
indecisive.
It has to be like right here.
Halo keyboard. What do you like to read?
Yeah, you want a pizza? You better go have some. I see it in your eyes.
Order to like bring in.
Oh, this is
order
vicious.
before so it is an hour.
This is vicious. So, one of my old coworkers, the conversation between her and one of the kids. That's vicious. I think she teach you peasant shoes.
I know.
I'm fine.
What are you?
I came from elementary and first. All first. Well, I also had a few kids. Like, I was supplemental math. Because I had 640 kids. Well, I mean, see, that's the thing. Most of them is something closer to that. 120, was it like, so that's. Yeah, I kind of I wanted to quit like halfway through my second year. So check it out. I don't want to ruin my reputation. And I just think
It's better like to have unless you do that.
Well, see,
when you do third grade, you do
for kinder, or now it's pre-kinder. For pre-kinder or second, you have one classroom. But the kids are rotating inside the classroom. So you have groups. Yeah. So like for instance, if you're teaching language, you have a group of 8 kids in front of you. And that's it. And then they rotate with another group of 8, and then they rotate with another group of 8.
in the classroom.
Yeah.
That's kind of like centers.
Essentially, yeah.
But-
Because there's two teachers.
But because they
I was like, damn, bro, that was fast.
What's up there? They put them in different levels. They test the kids to find out at what level they're at. If they're too high, then yes, they'll move. If they're too low, probably.
they open more.
Everybody take a bite, pass it on.
They get it fast.
Nothing announcing.
Like turtle.
Lick. I said lick it. No, I'm one of the lazy ones, man. I live too far away. Chico Beach.
Never packed lunch before.
By Boca Chica Beach, like are you like how far are you from Boca Chica Beach?
That's, to be fair, it's like a 5-minute walk from my house to my house.
A walk from your house to my house? Like by the beach? You live by the beach?
portables inside my
In the van?
my backyard. Yeah, that'd be weird.
That's crazy. So how far do you go?
It's today it took me 32 minutes to get. I mean, it's not.
I go fishing. Then I pass. If you can get an excuse what you get.
Yeah, see what I do is I go from that house, I go down all down Ferry, past the Lopez, right behind the airport. I get to Southmost, and then I go to Vipa Verde, and then I get on the highway, come here.
What's the tripod?
And then we outskirts.
You know what? I mean, the worst thing is like I live there, but I also have my job in San Benito, so I commute every day.
Oh, you live in San Benito? You go to school in San Benito?
I don't work. I work in San Benito.
Ideas?
No, because I have to. I want to do this together. I have my own company, but I doesn't want to do that. It's for HVAC. What are you gonna do?
Manual labor.
Like AC? AC?
It does, but I mean, not when you know certain like for instance, I work with the school district, so when the schools start running out of budget money, they don't call me anymore. It's like, oh, we need this done. Okay, we can't get it done because there's so much.
Did you get the Chick-fil-A? Dude,
That's the shit.
was it fun? Sounds good. Garlic and herb? Sounds awesome.
Man, I haven't had Chick-fil-A
What's wrong with
since
you?
holiday.
You have fun, I'm good.
I'm good.
Do you like buttermilk?
Who doesn't like buttermilk?
Yeah.
So he said garlic and
Garlic and herbs, French. Well, that's what it's called.
It's like one of the best things. Yeah.
I want to see that now.
How did garlic doesn't taste like that?
Oh, that's awesome.
Next week.
Oh,
It's like sweet and hot. You know, like the, what is the granny smith apples? You don't know what a granny smith is? The green ones?
Oh, okay. I know, green apples.
They're called granny smiths.
That's what I'm saying. I have to keep calling and then because as soon as I go in, my head takes off. So I have
That is really shit. Yeah, but that's at night. See, I'm always.
I get out of 10 to
You should be like all the floors watching on Facebook. That's where I watch to be like.
I'm happy.
You know, 1/4 of the circle, okay. But then the circle is a rectangle, which touches the edge of the circle. Okay, cool.
That's a
I'm waiting for my little one to kind of. I don't want to get into
You should. How old is it? No, sorry. It's just,
I don't know. It's pretty old.
you should keep an eye on the batteries. Because if you see the back of it starts to I don't know how many years it takes, but like I know.
But you can't take it off.
That's like just
How does it explode when you use it? When it's turned on?
every battery that's needed now.
Wait, this is 5?
Eventually. Yeah, that was it.
So you can actually see it. 10.
Oh, the phone.
See, I'm waiting for people to start being like, hey, I got the iPhone.
What
Yeah,
is
well, I
your
got money.
case? You're still broke.
I got $1,000. You went
And
broke.
you had this case on it?
No.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah, I did. But the time I decided to take it.
Oh my God.
Sam,
So then I put it back
how
on.
long is diagonal?
Well, I'm probably gonna have to get this case because I have a
less than 10.
2-year-old to break my phone. And then I have to, I'm Care Plus, so I'm gonna get
Oh, it is? What's too easy to do the math?
Then I only get 2 checks.
It's
So I had to get it done. I don't like that.
Show me.
Yeah, that's
Surely
why I'm
some
like, I'm
people
gonna stick it out.
diagram as a triangle formed by spontaneous heating. It's a right triangle. Surely. However, that short thing is exactly right. However, are you sure there isn't a much easier way to find the answer? And two, you don't need a Pythagorean theorem to answer this.
So the one time you
That's the
decided to
diagram.
do
Stop, stop, stop. Don't look at three. Are you basically considering? No.
What year did you get it?
It's a seven, is it?
No, it's a success.
I was hoping that'd be more sarcastic.
Just waiting for the new one.
It's a kid's game.
Then it comes up.
I was hoping it would be much more sarcastic. Samsung. Wait, what are they asking? Samsung. iPhone 8, I don't know. See, this is legitimate. I bet we'll have flying cars in the future. I bet. He just drops it.
Okay, shall we continue? I think it's 7:26. Yeah? Are we ready, Juan? Okay, let's move on so that we can get out on time tonight. Once we learn this idea of phonics, then we start working on the elements of phonics, and that is the letter sound correspondence. Then we get into spelling patterns, syllables, morphemes, which we'll define in a moment, but basically it's meaning-carrying word parts. And then the application of it and how that's going to help students learn how to read. So let's look at how we do it. Does this stuff sound familiar? Be explicit, be systematic. Give a lot of opportunities to practice. Give that assessment and feedback. And what's the other one that we're missing from this list? Do you remember? It's so important that it's repeated like 3 or 4 times. Begins with the letter M.
Model.
Model, that's right. It's model, 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 and model. That's right, okay? So again, just refer back to those effective teachers of instruction, okay? So letter combinations are groups of words that are together, right? The most common combinations are usually taught first, and let's look at these. And you should know these so that, remember, just like there's an order for teaching the sounds of certain letters, this is somewhat the order of teaching these combinations of letters. So letter patterns in the 100 most common words, okay? And we have TH, WH, OR, and CH. So TH, how is that pronounced? TH. That's right. Actually, there are 2. There's voiced and voiceless.
Yeah.
Right? That, and then say thank you. Thank. Voiceless, right? So TH is both, but generally we teach it as the voiced part. This one, how do we pronounce this? Or. That's right. How do you pronounce this word? Which? Like the thing that flies around? This is a funny one. It's a funny one. And again, regional differences and what's acceptable play a role, but the actual pronunciation of this word is what? Which. It's almost switching that WH around. It's which. It's not which. This is not when, like the hairstyling product. This is when and what. Yeah. So again, you know, you're going to have to leave it to your discretion about how much you expect the students to do with that, but that is correct. Other common patterns, EOUALLERAR. And we could really say that the A, E, O, kind of U, not so much I, with the R are very big, and that can be tough for a lot of kids. So we're going to look at these individually, but again, I urge you to understand these terms, because these terms come up on assessment. And sometimes it's in the context of what you do to teach it, but a lot of times it's just to give you information about what students are struggling with, but you should know. So if you see the word digraph on there, you should know what a digraph is. Because if you don't, then it's hard to treat it, right? So we'll look at all 10 of these very quickly, but I do want to say this. If you have any questions, you need any clarification, please ask as we go over them. But we should know these terms. First of all, a digraph is two. Di is two, graph is what? Written, right? So a digraph, two, in this case consonant digraph, two consonants put together that form one sound. Okay? That's a digraph. Two consonants put together to form one sound. These are very common ones. So this is where we get into PH. Right? And then we teach them that. That is the pronunciation of this letter. Is the pronunciation of this letter. But you know what? Sometimes we put two letters together and it makes a completely different sound. This is one of them. CH, we're familiar with that. What about SH? Would SH be a digraph? Sure. Yes. SH, ship, sheet, etc. Right? It's two letters put together that make only one sound, which is different from a blend. A blend is two letters put together that kind of have a sound together, but they retain their unique sound, like the word blend. BL is a blend, it's not a digraph. Just because two consonants are together doesn't mean it's a digraph. A blend is when two consonants are together, but they somewhat retain their original sounds. Does that make sense? A digraph, when two consonants are put together, one sound. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 letters in the word cheese. How many phonemes? How many? 3. Very good. Cheese. Very good. Okay, right? That CH, that digraph is forming one sound. Right? Sometimes we have trigraphs, like watch, TCH is a trigraph. Why would it be a trigraph and not a digraph?
Because there's 3 letters.
Because there are 3, that's right. I don't have to ask anybody else. Whenever I ask a question, they say, oh, let's look over. There you go. Okay, so a consonant digraph is when we put two consonants together to form one sound. Well, what do you think a vowel digraph is? Two vowels put together to form one sound. That's right. Okay? So again, these are two vowels, but we don't say ma-id, or we don't say may-ide. It's may. It's the A. Now I will say this, and you having studied linguistics probably have gone over this.
I hated it.
It's interesting, I was referring to Eric, sorry.
I did study linguistics
it's interesting to all of us.
I studied it both and I had to take it.
Okay.
Yeah, I did, but I had to take it twice because it's horrible.
When we listen to long vowel sounds in English, they're almost always really different. There really are two sounds. So if we say made, right, it sounds like A, but really, draw that A sound out, and you don't have to put your hand on your throat for this one, but, and just notice the movement in your mouth. Made, it's A, right? I mean, it's really kind of forming two sounds. So it's a little tougher, and especially for Spanish-speaking children, where it's very crisp. The vowel sounds just have that one sound. A. It's not A. It's E. It's O. It's not O. Right? So this can be a little difficult, but this is, if you know you have ELOs in your class, you work on that. So consonant digraphs, vowel digraphs, or vowel pairs. Diphthong. This is where the tongue shifts position during the articulation. It's not just one crisp sound. And again, we'll get to syllables later. Because toy has one syllable, right? Toy. But really, it's toy, oi, right? That putting these two vowels, in this case Y is functioning as a vowel, together, you have that movement in your mouth when it's articulated to show a change. Does that make sense? So again, diphthongs can be difficult, especially for second language learners whose first language doesn't have diphthongs, or at least not as many diphthongs. There are diphthongs in Spanish, like I, H-A-Y, right? That is a diphthong. But when we're looking at those clear crisp things, oil, coin, oi, right? So we have the consonant digraphs, we have the vowel digraphs or vowel pairs, diphthongs, and then this is another one. There is debate among some linguists that R, the letter R, should be considered a vowel because of the way it's formulated in the mouth. R, A, E, I, O, U, R. Yeah, and so when we put that R after a vowel, right? We have these R-controlled words. Guitar. A-R together sounds different than A on its own, right? That R controls the way it sounds. Guitar, car, manor, right? Does that make sense? Compound words, I think we're all very familiar with compound words. This is where we take two words that have significance on their own, we put them together, and they mean something different, right? So backpack, back and a pack, you put it there, it's a backpack, right? Newspaper, there's paper and it has news on it, so it's a newspaper. What about butterfly? I don't know about that one. Okay, go ahead, just work with your partners. You have 30 seconds. Take the words in the first column, connect them to a word in the second column to form compound words. Ready, go. 30 seconds.
Sunlight. Sunlight.
Climate change. Sunrise.
Rain paper.
Sand,
You got it? Okay, sun what? Very good. Rain? Yeah, I have a rain stick at home though too. Have you ever seen a rain stick? They're very cool, right?
Rain paper.
Rain paper. Oh, yeah. Okay, I want to hear your next one. Sand. Paper. Good. Yeah, sand drop. Did you have a drop with sand? And lip? Stick. Very good. Okay. So again, we know compound words are that. We're not going to do compound concentration. Again, you can look at this as an activity for your students. Okay? So, let's look at types of syllables. How many types of syllables do you think there are? 1, 2, 3. Go ahead, Eric. Tell me, how many types of syllables are there?
We have
What?
6 on the board.
Well, yeah, 6. That's right. Look at that. Boy, using the information around you to answer questions. Very good. Okay, so the second question is, what are they called? Don't worry about that. We'll look at them. Okay, this is what they're called. The first one is called closed syllable. Okay, closed syllable, and we will be doing an activity here with this. Okay, closed syllable, and what are the words, or what are the things for closed syllable? Well, they end in at least one consonant. So if a word ends in a consonant, it is, it may be a closed syllable. It contains only one vowel. Generally, if it contains one vowel, is the vowel going to be long or short? If it ends in a consonant? Short. Generally short, right? Oh, there it says it. The vowel is short. That's exactly right. Okay? Yeah? So I don't really like this one, and we should get rid of the GLE there. And this, yeah. So met, would this be a closed syllable?
Yes.
Why would that be a closed syllable?
Consonant, vowel, consonant.
That's right. It ends in one consonant, contains one vowel, and the vowel is short. Right? Sat. Why is this a closed vowel or a closed syllable?
Consonant, one vowel.
Consonant, one vowel. Ends in one consonant, has a short vowel sound. Very good. Okay, that's one kind. The second kind is an open syllable. Open syllable. We're going to forget this one for a little bit again. Okay? So this one ends in a vowel. Ends in a vowel. The closed syllable ends in a what?
Consonant.
Consonant. The open vowel ends in a, or open syllable ends in a, I gave the answer. Drat. What does it end in? A vowel. That's right. And is the vowel long or short?
Long.
Long. Me. Go. Ha. So. Etc. Right? So we have the closed syllable. We have the open syllable. How many did we say there are? Six. Oh man, we're only 33% through. 50% right here. Vowel, consonant, E. I'm sure this is a rule that we all learned in school, right? One vowel, then a consonant, and then the letter E. Vowel, consonant, E. Vowel, consonant, E. And when we put that E at the end, what happens to that first vowel? Is it short or long? Long or short?
First one?
No.
Yeah. If we put the E at the end, what does it do to that?
Long.
If we just saw this, and we're all proficient readers, I know. If we were to see just that, what would we say? Lack. Right? We see that, what do we do to the letter A? Make it long. Lake. If we just saw that, we would say lick. We see the E at the end? Like. Back? Bake. It's a long sound. Bick? Bike. Right? So we have the closed syllable, which is generally a consonant, vowel, consonant. Sometimes just the vowel consonant, like an. But yeah, that would be closed, it's short. We have the open syllable, which is ending in a vowel, and that vowel is long, right? And then we have vowel, consonant, E. Yeah, so we're halfway through. Bear with it, because you're going to do an activity with this. Then we have those R controlled. We talked about the R controlled. Whenever we have a vowel and then the letter R that follows, that is called an R controlled or a vowel R syllable. Bless you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay? Car, stir, park, lurk. Whenever we have a vowel followed by an R, we have an R controlled or a vowel R syllable. Oh man, we're 67% of the way done. Number 5. Vowel pair. Some call them vowel team. Vowel pair, vowel team, syllable. Two adjacent vowels. What does adjacent mean? Next to each other. That's right, two adjacent vowels. And this says must be learned individually. Yes. Why? Because most times, and I hear teachers say this, and I do like this, when we talked about going from easier to harder, always start with the rules, and then we talk about the things that don't follow the rules. Start with easy stuff and get to the harder stuff. I hear a lot. When two vowels go walking, have you ever heard this? When two vowels go walking, the first one does the talking. Now, it doesn't work so well with great. That's why I say don't start with great as one of yours. But when two vowels go walking, the first one does the talking, meaning it's the name of the vowel, right? So pale, it's a long A. Steep, long E. Meet, long E. And the second one is silent. When two vowels go walking, the first one does the talking. But again, that's only as good up to a certain point. That's only good up to a certain point, right? So we've seen closed syllable. We've seen open syllable. We've seen the consonant, vowel, consonant, E syllable. We saw the R controlled, or the R vowel R syllable. Now the vowel pair. Any idea what the sixth one might be?
I'm gonna go with the final stable.
That's my final answer.
Man, are you guys listening to this guy? When you take the test, sit near him. Final stable syllable. Man, this guy's good. That's exactly right. A final consonant LE combination or a non-phonetic but reliable unit such as TION. Whenever we see TION, do we say Tion?
No.
Taiwan? Taiwanon? No. What do we say? Shun. Right? So final stable syllable is exactly that. Consonant LE, that's why I didn't like wiggle and bugle earlier. We don't want to get confused, don't worry. And we know that there are more than one type of syllable per word, but we're just going to look at basic stuff, right? Accent usually on the preceding syllable. What does that mean? How do you pronounce this word?
Bugle.
Bugle. The accent's on the first syllable. Bugle. We don't say go. We don't say wiggle. We say wiggle. Right? Accent on it. So bugle, anything that ends in a consonant LE, or those things like TION where it's never going to be anything other than shun, liberation, education, transportation. Right? Yeah? How many types are there? Six. What's the first one called? Closed. And how do we know if it's a closed one? What are some of the...
Short consonant.
Right, and it's a vowel consonant. It ends in one consonant, or maybe more, but generally one. And is the vowel long or short?
Short.
Short. Very good. And then we have the, what's the second one called? Open. That's right. And the open ends in what? A vowel. And what kind of vowel? Long vowel. Very good. And then we have what? Vowel, consonant, E. Vowel, consonant, E. And when we put that E at the end, what happens to that first vowel? Makes it long. That's right. Vowel, consonant, E makes that vowel long. And then we have those funny little things called R-controlled. I'm giving you the answer to that one. But what does that mean? R-controlled syllables. Yeah, R after a vowel. Whenever you have R after a vowel. And generally changes the sound of that vowel, right? Very good. Then, after the R controlled, what's the fifth one? What is it? Oh, that's right. Okay, so what does that mean? When two vowels go walking,
The first one.
the first one does the talking, generally. But it's really when there are two vowels together to form one sound, like a diagram, right? Like a diagram. And then the last one? Final stable, that's right. And really, there are two things we need to remember for the final stable. They end in what? Either LE, consonant LE, or TION,
So
right?
So like Q and U, like using qua, what would that be? Would that be any type of syllable? Like using Q and U? No?
That's not on
No?
the page.
Because I know that Q and U always go together, like they always stick together. So is that anywhere?
Yeah, no, this is the thing. And we could get into it a little bit more. But when we divide words by syllables in English, and we're just looking at very simple words right now, right? But when we divide words into syllables, QU is just what?
Qua.
Yeah, but it's almost not generally, and it's not almost always. It's always in English followed by what?
A U.
A what?
The Q is always followed by the
Yeah, and then what follows that?
A vowel.
A vowel. A vowel, right? So QU is a funny little thing, but it's not a syllable, right? So like the word question. Question. How many syllables does question have?
One. Just
Forget
kidding.
that guy. What I said about him before? No mas. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. No, the quest is one, and then the shun, right? Question is 2 syllables. So we would be looking at the ES for that.
Okay.
And so I know QU is a little different, but it's the qua sound for that, and then it would be the short ES. So the reality,
I'm just saying
that
because-
syllable, it would be considered a closed.
Because you do teach that in kinder, right?
What's that?
The Q and U always, like the sound of the, when you say, when they're learning the word, the letter Q, they always use it as putting it with the U.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a rule in English. I mean, Qatar or Qatar, however we want to pronounce that country, doesn't have a U after it, nor does Iraq. But in anything English, it does. Am I answering your question
Yeah.
about what kind of syllable that
Yeah.
would be? Yeah. Good question. Okay, any comments or questions about these 6? Okay, this is what I want you to do. On your piece of paper, or on a piece of paper that you may have, or borrow one from somebody, please draw this, diagram, or this thing here, where you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns. 6 columns, and label the first one closed. Label the second one. What are you going to label the second column?
Open.
Open, very good. The third one?
Vowel consonant.
Vowel, consonant, E. If you want to put V, capital C, small e, go for it. It's easier. Vowel, consonant, E. And then vowel R, vowel pair. If you really want to write vowel team there, I'll allow it. But generally it's vowel pair. And final stable. If you want to put syllable, that's fine, but final stable, because all of these are syllables, really. Do you have it? Okay, this is where what I would like for you to do is try to do it on your own first, and then compare to your partners. If you really need help with one, that's fine to turn to a partner. Or if you really think one is just so interesting that you want to make a comment to your partner about it, feel free to do so. But I'd prefer that you try to do this on your own first. And what I am going to ask you to do is to look at these words here. Some of you took pictures of them ahead of time. But these words right here, this whole group right here. And I want you to put those words into the categories. So for example, the very first word, mess. Oh, I threw a wrench in that first one. Not really, though. What one would mess be?
Close.
Closed syllable. We're back on it. He's back on the top. Excellent. That's right, because it ends with a consonant. In this case, 2 consonants, but that's all right. It doesn't change the pronunciation of the E. It's not meese, right? It's mess. So short vowel sound followed by a consonant to end the word, right? So that would be a closed word. What about riddle?
Final stable.
Final stable. Very good. That's right. Now again, we could say, well, rid, that would be closed. But let's just try to put them into one category. If you want extra credit, put them into 2. If they're correct, go for it. Do you understand what you're going to be doing? Yeah? Okay, if you do need to come by and look at these words and take a picture so that you can do it at your place, feel free. Go for it.
So that's all I remember from elementary school.
Which one?
That's all I remember from elementary school. Those were 6 little chipmunks sitting on a branch, eating acorns on the Uncle Branch. That's all I remember. Anna, we'd like for you to share your findings with us when you're done.
Huh?
We'd like for you to share your findings with us when you're done. We have no idea. I don't teach English.
It's about.
Final syllable is word, final consonant, or foundation. So it ends in LE. So you can get tinkle, same. Oh yeah, that's okay. I get jurisdiction.
Yeah, W-A-R-T, wart. W-A-R-T. Yeah, feel free to come up and look or ask. I'll try to answer.
No.
Oh.
I'm just looking.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Would they be an open? The bottom, is that Maya? That's something. Is it a flower? You can consider that as, how do you consider the Y as well?
It's not my name. Could you hear that?
You put cards in.
Because you put this as a total, so it's stuff.
I put it as a song. Curve is two consonants. Curve is two consonants.
Right? Which one?
You said anything that ends in two consonants, but curve ends in two consonants.
No, but at the same level. Like mess, two S's.
Probably.
Stuff. Jazz.
Oh, maybe. Thank you. That's the word I was
Wait, is that card?
Which one?
After four.
It's this card. Inside.
Have you seen Walking the Dog?
But I don't know what it takes to form.
Jazz would be close.
Oh,
Because it ends in two consonants. Let me see right now.
What is that? What's after pickle?
Is that the little pickle? Is that
Mine.
What is that?
My, M1. My.
Mine is on there twice.
Pickled boil.
Yeah, mine is on there twice.
Oh, mine is twice. Drat. That means I'm probably missing a word. Because I'm not
Yeah, card is under.
What else is twice? Heart. Jeez. I'm missing a couple words. Oh well, they won't be even. Sorry.
I need two. I need vowel R.
Let me see which one I don't have or which one. I'm gonna say here. I hope I'm not in anybody's way.
Yeah, I have 6 here, 6 here, 6 here, 5 here, 6 here.
So we're going by spelling and not
I go back.
Would that go under vowel consonant?
No, that's the vowel consonant.
E, right?
Yeah. Sail, I mean, sail is a vowel consonant E instead of a final stable.
Okay, so mate.
because you pronounce it differently. It's called right. I say you want it.
I'm like, hey, I put it in the right place.
What'd you prefer, sail?
Sail?
Vowel consonant E?
Mm-hmm. Okay, you just need that.
No, it's still 5 6.
Okay, I have two more to put up there. Sorry. Maybe even it out a little bit.
That should be a vowel.
I have no idea why I would have forgotten these two words. I love these words.
So L-E.
Why?
The bird is a
I
word.
can't really tell you. No, I'm kidding.
Okay. Is it because a bird is a word?
Well, bird, one thing is, I used to always have fun with this, and I mean, not making fun of anybody because I'd have difficulty with Spanish too. But for people who don't speak English, to distinguish between bird and beard and beer, to distinguish among those words, it's tough, especially for pronunciation. So I always remember of how I would try to help people pronounce it. And bubble, I will tell you that one privately, why that one is.
I know a bartender named
Bubbles?
That's her name.
And I put mine twice.
That's what I thought too.
Okay, do you have them?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, so let's see, what do you have? Just kind of say it out, and if it's not what you have, if we come to a conclusion that it's not what you have, then if you feel comfortable enough to say, well, I thought it was this because, it's very possible that a couple of these fit into a couple of categories. So only if you feel comfortable, but otherwise we'll come to a conclusion, okay? What about mess?
Close.
Closed. Riddle?
Final.
Final stable. Cake?
Vowel consonant.
Vowel consonant E. P?
Vowel pair.
Vowel pair.
Vowel pair.
Open.
Open.
Open. He. Wort.
Control.
R controlled. Yep. Bet.
Close.
Closed. Boat.
Pair.
Pair.
Vowel pair. Hay.
Open.
Open.
No, I put pear.
I put pear.
Open.
It's pear. In
Vowel
this
pair?
case,
The Y is a vowel.
the Y is considered a vowel. The Y is acting as a vowel. It's two vowels going together. The first one does the talking, right?
Hay is vowel pair.
So hay is considered
Vowel pair.
vowel pair. If we thought that the Y was a consonant, it still wouldn't go under closed because why?
Because you don't sound.
It's long.
Right. It's a long sound. It wouldn't go under open. Why? Because if we consider this a final vowel, it's not making that long Y sound I. Does that make sense? So this is a vowel pair. Very good. Okay, back. Closed stuff. Closed. Tinkle.
Final.
Final stable. She.
Open.
Closed.
R control.
Are controlled. Deep.
Pair.
Vowel pair. Good. Suit.
Pair.
Excellent. Doll.
Closed.
For.
Closed.
Oh, sorry.
R control.
Are controlled or vowel R. That's right. Boil.
Pear.
Final.
Final.
Open. Put open.
What about my?
I put open.
I put pear.
That one is open. That's right. Because in this case,
My.
Y is a vowel. And we're saying it a long Y sound. I. Does that make sense? Yeah? Open. Cart.
R control.
Are controlled or vowel R. Education.
Final stage.
Final. Go.
Open.
High.
Open.
Open as well. Two opens in a row. I tried to fool you, but you didn't get fooled. Mate.
Vowel consonant.
Vowel consonant E. Mute.
Vowel consonant.
Curb.
R control.
R control. Very good. Pete.
Vowel consonant.
Vowel consonant E. Sight.
Vowel consonant.
Liberation. Final stable. So. Open. Bird.
R
control.
R control. Bubble.
Final.
Final. Stay. Yes. Very good. You got it. Bravo. You guys are good. Excellent. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That does deserve a round of applause. Okay. Excellent.
I missed that one.
I do want you to now spend a moment. I know that was difficult and people are, oh man, that was tough. But we got through it. 36 words. Oh my gosh. We did it though, man. And you did a good job. But I do want you to talk to your partners about this. What do you think could be difficult for students to learn about syllables? And how will knowing the types of syllables help students learn how to read? There may not be a correct answer or one correct answer for all of this, but I do want you to talk about it with your partners. What could be difficult for the students? And how will knowing these different types of syllables help students learn to read? Go ahead, take about 90 seconds to discuss this with your partners.
Like, was it either trouble with the Y? Or the bind out when it has a vowel? You gotta know when to use a Y as a consonant and when to use it as a vowel. It's considered a consonant and a vowel.
When is it a consonant?
Yes.
Give me an example. It sounds like all vowels.
It's considered a consonant. I mean, the sound is but it's used as a consonant.
So what do you think would be difficult for our students? Everything. Okay. The rules. Okay. What? I think that's the number one thing for us to focus on, the actual sounds. For them to be able to distinguish those sounds. I cannot tell you how many students I had at upper elementary into secondary where it was very difficult to hear those final stable syllables with the L. It was very difficult. What did they think it sounds like a lot of times? An O. They would spell bottle, B-O-D-O, bottle. You know, I mean, it was difficult, not because of the rule, but because of how they heard it. You're absolutely right. That's why that oral language development is so crucial to phonemic awareness, right? But yeah, but you know, maybe learning the rules. Now, we did it in 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Is that what you're going to do with the little 5-year-olds? Okay, these are the syllable rules, and they're going to be on the test on Friday. So sit down, be quiet, and listen. No, I mean, you'll work on it slowly. Maybe not expecting mastery. First of all, you'd just be working on what is a syllable, the different sounds, you know, dropping the jaw like we did yesterday. There are 2 syllables in this word, okay? Let's look at a few words that whenever we have a consonant and then it ends with or a vowel and then it ends with a consonant. Let's look at mat, cat, sat. Those are called closed. I mean, you don't even have to worry about the name of it, right? Now, whenever we end a word with the vowel, these short words, go, so, hi, me, my. Whenever they're just those 2 letters and it ends with the vowel and the vowel says its name, don't even worry about what they're called. They're called open. But don't even worry about that. Oh, those are open, sir? It's funny when you tell them, don't worry about it. They want to know, right? But again, you know, you don't lay all 6 rules on them in one day. You take it slowly throughout the year with the little kids, right? Now, you know, these kids who are at the secondary level, who are struggling with the language, and you want to teach them some of this, you could explain to them the different vowels in English. And they can make that transfer from the first language to the second so that they learn. I mean, you might not want to do that in your math class necessarily, but you work with the ESL teacher or with the language arts teacher to tell them they're struggling with these concepts, work on syllables. You can do that. Yes? Yeah? Okay. Okay, so we're moving on. We're moving on. Morphology. Morphology. The study of word formation. Oh my gosh, we're getting heavy duty now. What are phonemes? What are phonemes? Do you remember? We mentioned this, but we didn't really, you know, maybe write the definition. But what is a phoneme?
I know what means.
What about sound? You're right. It has to do with sound. Phone. The smallest unit of sound. Smallest unit of sound. Right? The smallest unit of sound. So, again, the word cheese has how many phonemes? Cheese. How many? 3, right? The smallest units of sound are ch, e, z. Right? So a phoneme is the smallest unit of sound. Right? And with our students, we need to blend and segment them. Put them together, tear them apart, so that they can recognize those individual sounds and recognize how putting them together has meaning. Right? So graphing, what do you think that is?
Written.
Written, right. Graph is writing, so it's what? Yeah, the smallest unit of writing that has, we could say, has meaning. We won't worry about that right now, but we'll just say that has meaning or sound, okay? I tell you what, how about if we just say to represent sound? Yeah, let's do that. I'm sorry, I should say smallest unit of writing. I hope you weren't writing with pen, sorry. To represent sound. Okay, so we said cheese has 3 phonemes, right? Right. So ship, S-H-I-P, right, has how many graphemes? Bless you. What do you think? Ship has how many graphemes?
2.
3.
I've heard, okay, finally somebody got it. Yeah. 4, 2, 1, no, it's 3, right? Ship has 3 graphemes, and that's all right. And I was kind of doing a hard one. But this is SH, even though it has 4 letters, SH together is a digraph, right? So this is the smallest unit of writing to represent one sound. Does that make sense? So cat has 3 phonemes, and it has 3 graphemes. But ship has 4 letters, but it has 3, right? It has 3, 1, 2, 3, because it has a unit of writing that represents a sound, and P has a unit of writing that represents a sound. Does that make sense? Yeah? So if a phoneme is the smallest unit of sound, and a grapheme is the smallest unit of writing to represent sound, what do you think a morpheme is? Oh my gosh, very good. That's right. It is the smallest unit of, oh yeah, meaning in one. Meaning, I'm just going to change it. Well, no, we'll just put any language. But we're going to be focusing in on words, right? That's exactly right. So phoneme, grapheme, morpheme, don't be thrown by these terms. These terms do come out on all of your assessments. These words come out, and you should know what they mean. At least have a decent idea, and you can figure it out. Morphology is the study of words, right? So morphemes are the morphemes with an M sound. They're not morpheme. Morphemes are the smallest units of meaning in language. And we're going to see that there are unbound and bound, and we need to know that. There are unbound morphemes and there are bound morphemes. Unbound morphemes stand alone. Smile. Now smile has how many phonemes?
4.
4. Sm, s, m, I, u. 4 phonemes, right? But it's just one morpheme, because you break that up and it doesn't mean the same thing. This together means one thing. It's the smallest unit of meaning in a language. Does that make sense? Book. Well, that has 3 phonemes, right? It has 3 graphemes, but it's only one morpheme. Yes? Because it has one meaning. It's, you take away the K, it doesn't mean the same thing. Boo. It doesn't mean the same thing. You take away the B, it's ook, doesn't mean that. Bach, right? Does that make sense? So a morpheme is the smallest unit of meaning in a language, generally when we're looking at words. Cute. Cut is not the same thing. Q is not the same thing. A Ute, the Indians out in Utah, not the same thing, right?
2 Utes.
2 Utes, yeah. These 2 Utes. What? Oh, that movie is so funny, isn't it? That is a great movie. Well, maybe not great. No, it's great. Right? It's a good one. I think it's wonderful. Okay, so does that make sense? These are unbound because they don't need to be bound to anything else to have meaning. If I say the word smile, it has meaning. I don't have to put anything else with it. Does that make sense? On its own, it has meaning. Now, bound morphemes, they have meaning. They have meaning, but they can't stand on their own. That has meaning. Happy and unhappy are very different. Happy is a morpheme. It's an unbound. It can be free and on its own. Is a morpheme because it has meaning. Not, but it can't be on its own. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's a difference between book and books. That S, that morpheme, changes the meaning of the word from singular to plural. But S on its own, that's not a morpheme. I mean, it's a morpheme, but it's not it's not on its own. It can't be on its own. It must be bound. It must be attached to other morphemes to have significance, to have meaning. So what are morphemes? Go ahead, you can look. Smallest unit of meaning in a language. That's right. And how many types of morphemes are there? Two. What are they?
Bound and unbound.
Bound and unbound. What's the difference between them?
Unbound, they cannot stand on their own. They
That's
different
right.
things.
So that means bound can
Stand on their own.
stand on their own. That's exactly right. Then we have these things called inflectional morphemes, right? Which generally are, I know, well, go ahead, put them into the category of bound, okay? Put them into the category of bound. I know there's something to everything. Do you believe that stuff? Yeah. So inflectional morphemes,
I hate these classes.
either modify the tense, so if we add ed to the end of a word, it's not the same as if we don't. I play and I played, very different meanings, right? Vicky's. Does that mean more than one Vicky? Without the apostrophe, perhaps. But with the apostrophe, it shows possession. So inflectional morphemes are generally under the category of bound. Okay? So that's
So you just say they're past tense. No, they're inflectional morphemes.
That's right! Very good. Now we're at the college level of this stuff. So you go home and say, you what? You played? Why did you add that inflectional morpheme at the end? Yes.
Last part that you said right now, they are like unbound. What did you say?
Well, inflectional morphemes, we're just going to put them in the category of bound for now. They're bound. Because apostrophe S on its own doesn't have really any, I mean, it has meaning, but you can't just have it out there by itself. It must be attached to something else. ED, well, maybe you have a friend, Eduardo, and you call him Ed, I don't know. But in this case, really, ED has to be bound to another morpheme in order to have meaning. Does that make sense? So we're going to put inflectional morphemes under the heading of bound. Yeah? Are we okay with that? For now, anyway. For now. I won't tell you anything different tomorrow, but someday later on. I might. Oh my gosh, derivational? What? Another one? Yes! This was fun. Derivational morphemes. Oh my gosh. This is where we change, generally, the part of speech. Happy is what? What part of speech?
Adjective.
Adjective, that's right. Happy is an adjective. It describes a happy person, a happy baby, a happy calf, a happy cowboy, right? But when we add NESS, which again, don't worry, it's bound, okay? But happiness, it's no longer an adjective. Now what is it? Happiness. It's a noun.
Noun.
It's a noun, right? So these derivational morphemes, you know, we could say T-I-O-N, you know, I-O-N, you drop the E, add I-O-N. To educate is a verb, but education is a noun. To liberate, to free, to make free, it's a verb, but liberation is a noun, right? So we have these derivational morphemes as well. Now sometimes what can happen is when we add these derivational morphemes, we change the pronunciation. What is this word here? Sign. Right? So here, happy, you add ness, well, happiness. Argue, you add ment, argument. Pack, you add unpack. Right? But sometimes we add these derivational morphemes and the pronunciation changes. This is sign. Is that signature? No. What is it?
Signature.
Signature. What's this word? Medicine. Medicine. Oh. Is that how we pronounce it? No. It's medicinal. Right? We should be aware of this. And maybe children should be aware of this. But what they should be more aware of is that don't worry about the pronunciation at this point. You can get meaning if you know the base word. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, pronunciation can change, but these types of derivational endings don't change, you know, the whole idea of the word. It changes from verb to noun, perhaps, but it's still about signing. It's still about writing your name. Right? Does that make sense? Any questions about morphemes? So again, you should know what a phoneme is, what a grapheme is, what a morpheme is. And if we know what a phoneme is and a grapheme, then we know what graphophonemic knowledge is, right? So they'll be throwing those words at you. And again, I don't want you to just know this for the test, although yes, you want to know this for the test, but this should be part of our vocabulary at a high level. Again, maybe not necessarily with 4- and 5-year-olds in the classroom, but among us, talking about graphophonemic knowledge, you know, is kind of cool rather than saying, well, the relationship between sounds and letters, well, the graphophonemic knowledge, right? Okay, so stages of spelling development, what you'll want to know here, and we'll go through these stages, but this is what you should know. The big idea is that we do go through stages of development. Students go through stages of development regarding spelling. And so on the test, again, referring to the test, what happens many times is that they'll give a situation where a child is having difficulty. And then the question would be, what stage of development is this child in? Or they'll say, you want to do this, why is this not a good idea? Well, because they're in this stage of development and this is too developed for them. Or they're at this higher level of development and I'm doing something way too low. Does that make sense? So it's always in the context of resolving an issue with a student. And so we need to know what stage of development they're in. So here's the pre-phonetic. Uh-oh, geez, how many morphemes does this word have? Pre-phonetic. How many morphemes?
3.
3, that's right. The base is phone, right? Sound. But there's also pre, meaning before, and the TIC, which makes it an adjective, right? So pre-phonetic. Don't worry about that. You don't have to take notes on how many phonemes that is, but just kind of cool to know, right? Okay, so pre-phonetic means they don't have it down. They're not really understanding the relationship between a sound and the meaning of that sound, right? Where would children be many times at a pre-phonetic stage. Well, age 1, age 2 sometimes, right? Even later on. Semi-phonetic. Oh my gosh, here we go. Another 3 morphemes, right? Semi means what? Half, right? So they're kind of getting there, but they're not there yet. The child becomes aware that letters represent sounds and may use salient features to spell. So they might spell seed, SD. Why would they spell seed, SD? Because those are the big sounds they hear. Seed, seed. Another thing, you might want to write this down because I have seen this come out on the test, and I just think it's more fascinating than test worthy. But what you'll see with kids is they will write words. The size of the words are in relationship to the importance of them. So it's very interesting. You'll have them write down the people of their family, and they might write dad, 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 dad. And then they write cat, cat. Because the father is more important. Or unfortunately, sometimes it's vice versa, right? Cat, my savior, dad. Yeah, it's interesting. So the size of their letters can somewhat indicate their relationship to that object. But this is very big, very, very big, the semi-phonetic stage. And you need to learn to interpret this with kids too. But they use the most salient features. The most salient means the most important to them or the ones that come out the clearest. So when you hear that word seed, you hear the s sound. We know it has the E sound, but they hear s, d, seed. Right? Does that make sense? So pre-phonetic, before they really have an awareness. Semi-phonetic, they know. They know there's something going on with those letters and sounds. But they haven't mastered it. Phonetic stage. Here we go. Phonetic stage. The child represents every sound that is heard. S, A, M. Same. Boom. 3 phonemes in same. Therefore, it's S, S, A, M. Same. S-A-M. Does that make sense? And I will tell you, you'll see this a lot. You'll see this a lot. They hear her. Where does the E fit into that? They hear the in the her, right? Those R control vowels, especially the ER, IR ones. So we have the pre-phonetic, where not a lot of conceptual knowledge about it. Semi-phonetic, oh, they understand there's a relationship there. But they just really pick out the parts that they really hear. Here, phonetic, they hear the sounds, but they don't know the spelling patterns for them. Right? How do you think they might spell knife? A knife that we
N-I-F-E.
N-I-F. You'll see that. N-I-F. You'll see kids spell that. You'll NIF. What? Knife.
Isn't that happening with texting?
I'm sorry?
Isn't that happening with texting?
We're going backwards instead of forwards.
They go cuz, C-U.
Duh. C-U-Z, cuz. Yeah. Hopefully they're doing that intentionally. That's what I'm hoping for with my children. That is intentional. They know because is B-E-C-A-U-S-E, but yeah, I don't know if we're going backwards or not. Some people, I will say this, and this isn't to spark a controversy right now, there are many people in education advocating for not teaching spelling. Because we have word check, spell check on everything, handwriting. A lot of people are now advocating to bring handwriting back. Nobody has cursive anymore. Right? And it's very interesting. So, I mean, things go in stages. Some people view it as an advancement. Some people view it as regression. I don't know. Say, sir?
Yeah, the semi-phonetic stage, you said that kids will write words.
They'll write words with the most salient aspects of the word. Most salient aspects of the word. So, a lot of times vowels are dropped because they just hear those consonants. The consonants man. Maybe man might be a bad one, but even men, I've seen men, MN, right? So a lot of times it's the vowels that are dropped. With the phonetic stage, lots of times vowels are dropped too, just like here. But it's not just the vowels, it can be those digraphs that we hear and things like that, right? And Delilah, did you have a question or a comment?
I think it was about the same. I guess I just got a little confused with the example for her and on the semi-phonetic, the example for C, because they left out the vowel.
Yeah. I think you're right. And they could be about the same thing.
But I guess it would just depend on the other words that they're...
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And again, I could see maybe not C being in the phonetic stage because you're missing that E sound, right? C is definitely in the pre-phonetic or the semi-phonetic. But her, that's a one where that could be semi-phonetic. You're right. I agree. Could be. Okay, we're not going to go into the spelling routine. You guys will learn this. But what I will say is this. Spelling, and if you want to write this down, go ahead. Spelling is not. Spelling is not. And you can either write not in capital letters or you can underline it or something. Spelling is not giving a list of words on Monday.
No.
Telling them to write the words 10 times. Giving a practice quiz on Thursday. And giving a test on Friday. And never revisiting those words. That is not what spelling is. Do I need to say that one again?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. I hope I'm going to use the same words, but hopefully the idea is there. Number one, spelling is not giving the list of words on Monday.
Check.
Having the words, have them write the words 10 times each.
Why is it still being done?
It is not having a practice quiz on Wednesday or Thursday. And then it is not having a test on Friday and never revisiting those words. That is not what spelling is. Is that done? It's done. It's done. Is that effective? All the research would show no, 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 and I think the last research showed no. It is not effective. Now again, as we said yesterday, some kids will learn in spite of us, right? Some kids are good spellers, some have much more difficulty.
How would you have them learn how to spell?
Well, kind of as it says here, you know, that you introduce big ideas about it. And again, whatever is grade level appropriate, you know, introducing words for kinder kids is very different than introducing words for second grade kids, right? So, but that they introduce a certain graphophonemic knowledge skill. So maybe AI words or the long A spelled with the A sound. Is it AI or AY? Pay and lay and say versus made and pale and, you know, things like that. So there's a certain big concept about it. And you talk about it and you give a lot of examples and have the kids give examples and have them say why it is. Then maybe on Tuesday, you practice the phonemic segmentation. Remember, blend means put things together. What does segmentation mean?
Just
take them apart. That's right. So blend, we put together. Segment, we take them apart. So pale, we'd say, okay, what are the phonemes in pale? P, A, O. Good, that's right. So what is the first phoneme? P. How do we spell P? P. Good. Then we have the A. A. Now in pale, how do we spell pale? The A sound in pale? A-I. Good. Right. Write that down. A-I. And then the O sound. How do we represent the O sound in writing? L. Good. You know, I mean, things like that. You talk about it and have them discuss it as well. Then day 3, maybe on Wednesday, identify those phonemes and the graphemes that represent them. Again, talk about the phonemes and graphemes and do it. Do a phoneme grapheme mapping activity. What does that mean? Where would we put these words? How would we group lay, pay, say, pale, made, daily? How would we put those into groups? Go ahead, put them into groups. Why did you do that? Well, I put pay, say, lay all together because they have the AY. And I put pale and made and daily together because they have the same sound of A, but it's AI. You see what I mean? Right? It's very active. The kids are participating. It's not just copying the words. Does that make sense? Then you can take a spelling test.
Okay.
And lots of times with dictation. You always want to put the word into context. You don't just say number 1, pay. Pay.
Using
No.
visuals combine those word combinations is.
I'm sorry?
I've seen it used with visuals also when you using combinations.
Always, 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 forever and ever, amen, with visuals, especially for our second language learners, and depending on their needs. Absolutely.
But like for
By the time we get to 2nd grade, maybe not so much, but at kindergarten, I would always like to introduce words in context with visuals.
But for,
Always.
like that would be good for kinder, but what about like 5th grade and what kind of even words like you had to study, social study words or anything like that? How would you teach it? Same way?
Same way. Now, again, generally within those other content areas, it's more conceptual groups of words, like civilization, establishment, laws and rules or whatever, Whereas in spelling, it's generally a phonemic or a graphophonemic skill that they're learning. So, you can certainly, as we mentioned, combine those, the overlapping of these things, and if you see they need certain skills in it, if everybody is spelling civilization, education, liberation in social studies class, S-H-U-N, then you say, hey, there's a rule in English, T-I-O-N. Let's work, and these are going to be some spelling words for social studies this week. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Okay, so you have a chance to look at that on your own. I'm not going to go into this so much, but to understand that is sequential. You see how we went from really just the oral language development to all of a sudden now we're spelling. Wow, we did a lot in one night, 3 hours, right? Not even 3 hours. Jeez, it's like 2 hours and 45 minutes that we did it. It's a lot, but it's doable, right? My big question right now is it understandable? Do we feel like we have a little bit of a handle on the components of reading at this point? How many components are there? 5. We've only looked at 2 so far, but what are those 2? Phonemic awareness and phonics. Very good. Are they the same thing? They both have phon in them. No. Phonemic awareness,
The sounds.
we do it with our eyes closed, and what is it? It's all about what? Sound. It's auditory, distinguishing those sounds in our environment, right? Whereas phonics, can we do that with our eyes closed?
No.
Maybe after we become proficient, but not at first we can't. Why? It does still do a sound, but it deals with sound in relationship to the letters. That's right. Very good.
Right on.
We feel like we have somewhat of a handle on this stuff so far?
Yes.
Cool. We'll take it home tomorrow at, I'll be here at probably about 8 o'clock. We start at 9. We start at 9. Yeah. Did you ever see Casablanca? Casablanca, really, I know it's a lot of people, but that's definitely one of my, I love that where they're giving the money to the and he says, no, tomorrow I'm in office. And they say, okay, we'll be there at 8. That's fine, I'll be there at 8. But anyway, okay. So, yeah, we'll see you tomorrow then. Coolness, thank you all very much.
I may put a feed out it'll make it I feed out for enthusiasts. Everybody gives me a
Party is.
I totally see that happening.
And time progresses that if after 8 p.m.
That's the same.
might end up having to pay $10
Was it ever? No, I'm not making it. Was that?
Nah, dude, I'll probably be the same. Thursday killed me. Everything that happened Thursday just killed color.
Yeah.
No sleep, everything.
Apparently,
Catch
no
it
one
up.
that killed it lost.
I hope so. Take care. Really?
Well, I'm a retired IT. Oh, wow. I teach now. Cool. So, in what is it? You never wanted to get that. You never do it for the where you develop a profile of people that live
Yeah, no, I find that fascinating. I do find that fascinating. It is very interesting. One thing I think is even more fascinating is not just the language, but how it affects our way of thinking. You know, it can be a good thing. Like Twitter, how many characters or max is it? Like 140 maybe? Is that maybe?
I don't
even
know.
less?
I don't bet.
Yeah, I don't either. But I mean, it forces people to say what they want within 140. So after a while, you're only thinking in 140 characters. You know, I mean,